Ding, ding. Welcome to the meeting of the South Bay Union School District Board of Trustees. Today is Thursday, March 7th, 2024. We welcome all trustees, superintendent, staff, and public. As a courtesy to others, we ask that you silence your cell phones during the meeting. Your cooperation is appreciated. On that note, we're going to call the meeting to order again at 6 o'clock, and we'll do our roll call, please.
Ellsworth, Liker,
Present.
Medina,
Here.
Quinones.
Here.
We have one absence, Trustee Lopez Aguino.
Thank you so much. We're moving on, and I'd like to recognize Central and Sunny Slope students, Christopher Espaza and Maximilio Trevino, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may sit.
Thank you so much. We do have some certificates, and if you'd like to go on over to your bulletin boards and take a photo with parents and principals, that would be great. We take a minute or two now for the public. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and congratulations, parents, on outstanding students. Yay. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, parents. Thank you, students. We're going to go ahead and move on to item 3, school reports. I'd like to welcome and recognize Principal Eduardo Salazar, who's going to give us a presentation on Central School. Welcome, Principal Salazar.
Good evening, President Quinones, trustees, Superintendent Espinoza, and executive team. Thank you for allowing me to be here to share with you the work that our Central Elementary team has been doing to ensure that we make a difference and have a positive impact on the lives of the children that we serve. I also would like to acknowledge and thank the representatives from our school in the audience. It is an honor to serve the Central community. I would like to start off by saying that I am grateful for the opportunity to serve this community as their new principal. I am very proud of our students, the staff, and the community as a whole. we started off this year reflecting on the work that has been carried out examining our data and identifying successes, but also reflecting, always reflecting on our areas of greatest need. At Central, we serve 380 students and their families, 37% of whom are multilingual learners. 18.7% of those whom we serve participate in the special education program. 63% are English-only students, and 37% are identified as socioeconomically disadvantaged. As you can see, we serve a very diverse population, and we're very proud of that. I will share some data highlighted in the California School Dashboard. As you can see, our greatest progress has been in the area of English language arts. The data indicates that in the area of ELA, we made a 4.87 point gain from 18.34% of students meeting or exceeding the standards in 2022 to 23.21% in the year 2023. Indeed, that is a great improvement, but we are fully aware that we need to continue to sustain improvement as we move forward. On the other hand, the area of greatest need indicated by this data is the area of math. Student data in math indicates that performance remained relatively the same. We made a tiny growth from 991% in 2022 to 10.13% in 2023. So when we look at these numbers and we evaluate our current state, I feel confident that we can replicate, what we did in ELA, and that we can set our goals high to attain a more ideal state in regards to a more favorable academic growth. I'm also happy to share that our multilingual learners have made significant improvement as our multilingual learners increased from 48.1% to 55.3%. This is making progress towards English language proficiency. That is, again, a 7.2 increase. In the area of chronic absenteeism, which has been one of our areas of focus, we have also moved the needle and showed a decline. So decline is good. Decline by 11%. So far, if we compare our current rate of attendance from last year to this year, we continue to reflect a positive gain. So you can see that 89.3% as of February 27th of 2023, compared to 27 of the current year. There is a slightly over a 1% growth as well. So we continue to make progress, and progress is good. Lastly, we have seen a positive decline in suspension rate by 0.4%. These numbers, for the most part, indicate and reflect good news and a reason to celebrate in general. As a team, Central Elementary is committed to ensuring academic growth in reading by focusing on differentiated, student-centered, standards-based instruction and progress monitoring through the use and implementation of evidence-based interventions, such as, but not limited to, small group instruction and the use of GLAD strategies. To support this goal, specific action steps are taken as a school to provide classroom teachers with PLC release days to meet with their grade level partners to focus specifically on English language development, small group guided reading instruction, and analysis of student data. The goal is to provide students with the support they need to attain academic success. Our second goal is to support and promote equity and inclusivity for all student groups. We have provided extended professional development opportunities for 7 teachers on campus in collecting and obtaining street data. Our goal is to collect data and create actionable steps to increase student voice on campus. So far, we have conducted more than 45 empathy interviews and are in the process of analyzing such data to create, like I said, actionable steps to give student voice and make sure that they feel welcome in our community. At Central, we acknowledge that creating safe learning environments that support students' social, emotional needs and foster a sense of connectedness and belonging is necessary for students to engage and be successful both academically and socially. So for goal 3, we have focused on strengthening school-wide implementation of the PVIS framework, providing social and emotional support to students and creating spaces for families and the community to interact with the Central staff and students. To support social emotional learning, every teacher has allocated 5 half-hour time slots during the regular school week to have community circles and foster connectedness through the use of SEL curriculum. In addition, our counselor has developed a pacing guide to push into classrooms to deliver Tier 2 support. Our school counselor and behavior instructional assistant have a significant impact on how we provide social emotional support to our students on a regular basis. An area of opportunity for growth is being able to open our doors and welcome our community to be co-participants in the development of their children's academic and social development and develop their full potential. Our incredible, talented staff and educational partners have been instrumental in supporting this work. At Central, we believe in the power of making a difference, of touching lives and supporting each other during this wonderful journey over the rainbow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting this evening. Do you have any staff here that we can recognize as well? Raise your hand, Central. Oh, I see you. There you are. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open up to a volunteer on the trustees. Trustee Leitner.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm so happy to hear that our attendance is up and that we are growing in different areas. Central is centrally located in our community, so I feel like those families, those kiddos, they touch everybody because they're right in the middle of our community. So thank you for your presentation and all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It's a huge increase in attendance. And I like the way that you mentioned that the psychologist is going into classrooms. I think that's making a big impact. Thank you for your support for our students.
Thank you. I have an amazing team. Thank you.
And I will also thank you here. I know it's hard to be a principal, and it's just wonderful that you are very positive and you are instilling positivity with your staff and all of your little constituents, better known as students and families, of course. But thank you. Thank you for your positive attitude.
Thank you. I do reiterate that I have a great team behind me, starting from my, the executive team, my PLN who is here to support me, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you so much again. We appreciate your time and your attention to presenting to the board. And I want to echo my colleagues here at the dais that we do appreciate when principals come and give a school report and shine a spotlight on their school. So I appreciate you, and I'm, like I said, I echo the board and thank you.
Thank you.
So we're moving on. We'd like to recognize Principal Estela Corrales, who will give a presentation on Sunny Slope School. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'd like to just thank Mr. Esparzo for bringing Christopher to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much for being here. Yay. And I think the rain scared everyone away, but I do want to recognize and thank the Sunny Slope staff that is here tonight. I'm incredibly grateful to work with such a wonderful team. I thank you, ladies. This is my clicker. Okay. Let me see if I can figure out the clicker. Oh. Okay. I'm going to start with this quote because I think this quote encompasses like the mindset that we have at Sunny Slope, and it guides our daily work. So we are about ensuring equity by meeting the needs of our diverse learners through culturally and linguistically responsive practices. And this is really important because we are serving a community of that is composed of 60% of students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged and 63 multilingual learners. So it is imperative that we have a mindset where we understand that we have to continually respond to the learning needs of our students. Where am I pointing? You? That's why I'm pointing up there. Okay. Under goal 1, our primary focus is English language arts. And this year, one of the strategies that we put in place was to release teachers for 3 full days to meet in PLCs. And our focus was reading instruction. Specifically this year, we were aligning our phonics, word study, and assessment plans. And this time has really allowed us to strengthen our reading instruction in these areas in grades K-6. Another strategy has been to provide quality reading interventions. All of our teachers are trained in guided reading, and they all implement guided reading on a daily basis. In addition, we hired 2 instructional assistants who provide support to approximately 65 students daily. In the area of math, we are voluntarily administering the district math units of study assessments in grades K2 and the FIABs in grades 3-6. And these pre and post assessments really provide teachers with data about what standards have and have not been mastered, and then allows them to respond accordingly. This is our data. I shared this data last year, but I added one more row this year. This shows 5 years of data, starting with 18-19. I was not at Sunny Slope during 18-19. But I wanted you to see the pre-pandemic scores. 1920, there was no data because we closed. In 2021, we were all home and distance learning. And then for the last couple of years, this English language arts data has remained flat, but it it's still close to what it was before the pandemic began. So it is a little bit of good news, but I do recognize there's still a lot of work to do in English language arts. Now, this is our site FMP reading data, and this is showing us data from the fall of the current year to the winter, which the window just closed a couple weeks ago. So if you look on the left side, you'll see that in the fall, about 46.6% of our students were meeting or exceeding the reading benchmarks. And in the winter, that number grew to 50.84%. On the right side, you have the students that are not yet meeting. In the fall, we were at 41.3, And in the winter, we're at 36.3. So that's also a celebration that we are trending in the right direction. And the idea here is that this assessment correlates with CASP. And so I am really looking forward to seeing our CASP data to see how this correlates with that. In math, I have a similar slide for 5 years, but if you just focus on the last 3, you'll see an upward trend in math as well. Again, close to pre-pandemic levels, but we still have some work to do. And again, the work that we're doing with the math assessments and really are aligning our instruction to the standards, I'm expecting to see an increase. Under goal 2, advancing equity and inclusion, our primary focus has been to engage in collecting street data to learn more about how we can support our chronically absent students. And so we combine this street data work with our ICANN work. So we've had a really strong focus on increasing attendance. By combining these two, we have engaged with over 60 students that are chronically absent and 20 families through empathy interviews, through fish bowls, through check-ins, through postcards, through all kinds of different strategies that we've tried, because we want to know their stories. We want to know the barriers. Why aren't they coming to school? And what is it that we can do to support? What can we do to help them? And so on this next slide, oh, and also before I move on, another big important work with our dual immersion program. I believe this really falls under the equity goal. We are fortunate to have a 50-50 dual immersion program at Sunny Slope. The first graduating class graduated last year. It's still a fairly new program in the terms of the dual immersion world, but by design, these programs do provide culturally and linguistic inclusive environments for our kiddos. So not only do students have the benefit of learning in 2 languages, but they also have an opportunity to develop social cultural competence, okay, which is really important. So in terms of equity, this is a valuable and unique program, and we are very lucky to be able to offer it to the students in our community. In terms of goal 3, one of our biggest goals and strategies has been to increase family engagement. I am really thankful for the support of our social worker, our family liaison, and our TOSAs for facilitating all of the parent workshops you see on this list. We have had a very positive response from our parents, and we've seen a higher overall level of engagement in school site council, ELAC, PTA. And in addition, we have over 62 parents that have been cleared to volunteer. And finally, last but not least, I want to highlight our participation in ICANN through the San Diego County Office of Education. We have a strong team of 8 staff members who meet weekly every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. It's a hard time to meet, but we do it, and we've never canceled. And we are using data to really look at what strategies we can implement. So we are looking at data and responding accordingly. And that guides our work as to what to do next, what strategies to implement next. And again, we're targeting students that are chronically absent. So on the next slide, you will see that this is a year-to-year comparison from 22-23, February the 28th. We were 45.64% of our students were chronically absent. That means that 45.6% of our kids were missing 18 days or more. And this last month, we were at 27%. So we have an 18.62 percentage point difference, which equals about a 40.8% reduction in chronic absenteeism. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm going to show you just a 1-minute video just to summarize in pictures some of the work that we've been doing at Sunny Slope. Thank you for allowing me to present to you tonight. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for presenting this evening. I'm going to go ahead and open up to the floor.
Thank you. The chronic absenteeism reduction, that is huge. Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for all your hard work and I love the video. Really gives a sense of like warmth and community, and it's nice to get that feeling of like what your students and staff must feel when they're at Sunny Slope. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to echo, trustee Laker, what you're doing, gathering feedback, doing the fishbowl and all that is really making a huge difference on your chronic absenteeism and in your attendance. Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
It's really cool to see arrows going in the right direction, even though you have to stop and think, oh no, this is a good one. These are we're used to, but this is good too. Yeah, and again, congratulations on your chronic absenteeism. That
Thank
must
you.
mean that you're doing something at school where
It was the silly string, the principal that did it.
something. It had to
No.
be.
No, you know what? We have a really strong ICANN team. I have 8 members and they're really committed. We're reading a book in our book study about teamwork. And one of the chapters that I recently read was about if you don't do the work, you're not going to get the results. But it talks about commitment and sacrifice. And there are some Monday mornings that we think, oh my gosh, it's Monday morning. And here we are. But it's been really worth it to see the results and really targeting, knowing who we're targeting exactly by using the data and then figuring out what strategies we're going to implement. But we've done a lot of targeted events like movie nights and neon dances and things just for those kids.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you for your efforts.
Yeah,
Very
thank you.
much.
Thank you, Principal Corrales. Again, congratulations on your attendance. It's always good to hear that we're making progress in the team that supports that work on Monday. Monday's a hard day. But I just want to have a quick question for you about any correlation with the improvement in attendance and the many volunteers that you have.
I think overall, I think it's just building community with everyone and reaching out to folks. Once you reach out and you establish those relationships, you know, they start coming. And our family liaison has done a nice job of inviting. Actually, last week, she just had another volunteer day. We had just to thank them, and we invited Maria Osborne, and she's done a lot of outreach. We've all done a lot of outreach. So I think, and we're communicating about attendance at the same time. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
coming
much.
back.
Thank
And-
you.
And thank you to Sunny Slope. Okay, well, moving on to report of action taken in closed session. Board Clerk?
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, so upon the motion of President Quinones, seconded by Trustee Medina, a vote of 3-0 with 2 absences, the board took action in closed session pursuant to Education Code Section 44929.21 to non-reelect a probationary certificated employee, employee number 657664 for the ensuing school year 2024-2025. However, the notice shall be deemed rescinded in the event a settlement agreement is executed by and between the parties and approved by the board no later than April 11th, 2024. The superintendent or his designee shall notify the employee of these actions in writing.
Thank you so much for the report. We're moving on to item 5, changes in the agenda. At this time, trustees or executive team members may recommend changing the order of the agenda items and or request that an item from the consent calendar be placed within the discussion action section of the board meeting. The secretary will keep track of any recommendations. Please note, no new items may be added without advance public notice. Are there any changes to the agenda? Superintendent? Hearing none, we'll move to 6, approval of the meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve the March 7th, 2024 regular meeting, board meeting agenda? As we have determined, there are no changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call for the vote.
Ellsworth. Liker,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you so much. We're moving on to communications of the Board of Trustees. We have a 5-minute limit per group. Our first group up, and welcome, is South Bay PTA Council.
A little nervous. Okay. Good evening, President Quinones, board members, Superintendent Espinoza, executive team, and community members. My name is Linda Torres. I'm the parliamentarian for South Bay Council. I'll be giving this report for South Bay PTA Council this evening as our president is unable to join us. We were very pleased to have Vice President Medina and Superintendent Espinoza join us at the 9th District PTA Founders Day breakfast and annual meeting on February 28th. The theme was Leap into Art. The keynote speaker was Russ Sperling, Director of Visual and Performing Arts for San Diego Unified. He spoke about how important visual and performing arts are for our students and about Prop 28, which provides annual funding for art education. There is a planning toolkit available. We have also enjoyed some very successful Read Across America events at Emory, Oneonta, and Imperial Beach Charter. Nikolov held a family reading night to celebrate. Barry, Emory, Mendoza, and Imperial Beach Charter have had a very successful book fair, bringing the opportunity for students and parents to purchase new books. All of our units will be holding election over the next couple of months. There are many opportunities for parents and teachers to run for office on their PTA board. Many of our officers' children are aging out and moving on to middle school and high school. So we need new parents with new ideas. There are also office open on council for the next year. The more parents we have, the more events we can provide for students and their families. Ask any PTA member how to get involved. Remember, it is collaboration between parents and teachers that make PTA possible. Parents-Teacher Association, by working together, we could do great things for students and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up would be California School Employees Association, Chapter 59, CSEA. No report? Thank you. Thank you so much. Moving on to Southwest Teacher Association, SWATA. You have SWATA? Okay, moving on. We have up next our district superintendent. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, President Quinones, and welcome to everybody in attendance, board, community members, executive team, and all the staff that are here today and listening over Zoom. Today, I just want to take a really quick minute just to reflect on some of the news that's coming out in our county. I was reading earlier in the week that San Diego Unified is going to be doing, huge layoffs. They're laying off something like 400 something employees. Chula Vista just recently announced that they're laying off about 100 employees. And that really got me thinking. We all know that in education right now, budgets are really stressed. We know that across the state. But when I heard the news of San Diego Unified and of Chula Vista and, who knows who else coming up, I really felt really thankful. Number one, for our board, who's been very good in the last couple of years around direction and what they want to accomplish with our budget. Number two, to our negotiating teams, both the district, SWATA, CSEA, who have worked together to really come up with really good solutions where our staff still received really nice raises, staff all the way across our district. And we were able to stay away from layoffs as long as possible. And that is in the face of declining enrollment, right? Our district is declining faster than all the districts in San Diego County, at least. I'm not sure outside of that, but even though we're declining at a higher rate than other districts, we're still able to be very competitive in salaries. And we were able to stay away from layoffs. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I don't think anybody, those aren't things that districts are generally acknowledged for. But that took a lot of work. And again, it took a lot of work from our whole team, starting from our board all the way through our negotiating teams and everybody else. So I just wanted to say thank you to those teams. We have probably a rough road ahead of us. But again, working together as a team, I know that we're going to do very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Now we move on to public comments on non-agenda items. Public comments. The board will take no action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda, except as authorized by law. Individual speakers are allowed 3 minutes to address the board on a non-agenda item. Speakers are not permitted to yield their time to another person. The board limits the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Do we have any public comments, Ms. Cooper?
Yes. Kathy Parsons.
Hi. I told you guys I'd be here every meeting and I will be here every meeting. I wanted to tell you, I remember last month's board meeting, it went way over 10 p.m. We got back to the house. Westview School was all lit up with a whole side of unlocked doors. Now I suspect your community, your nice security system here will be able to close those doors and lock them and turn off all the lights in a school. I just want to bring to attention, this is what you're losing by putting these residents out. We send us letters about how you're going to consolidate schools. Sorry, Central. Why didn't you sell the property to the people who lived on it for 40 years? You could have made some kind of money. I mean, to me, again and again, it isn't fair. And I have a sister who says over and over again, well, it's not the board's fault. I said, yes, it is the board's fault. They voted for it. So yes, it is. I just want to bring that up to you guys. Okay. Thanks.
Mary Doyle.
Good evening, trustees, President Quinones, Superintendent Espinosa, staff, and community members. My name is Mary Doyle. I'm a community member, retired Mar Vista High teacher, and former trustee here, and I'm here to thank you and update you on our project to get all of the San Diego Region School Board trustees to pass proclamations or resolutions regarding the border sewage crisis that we are experiencing less than a mile away from Burgess Auditorium. Since you passed the South Bay Proclamation last February 8th, I have visited Coronado Union, Sweetwater Unified, San Ysidro Elementary, San Diego Unified, Chula Vista Elementary, and National City Elementary board meetings, and spoken during public comments. I emailed the trustees and superintendents beforehand and sent a copy along of your past proclamation. Thank you, South Bay staff, for a fact-filled and succinct proclamation. It was a wonderful document to email out. I've heard back in one way or another from all of the school districts and expect agenda items either next week, though it is the week of RIFs, the month of RIFs, or in April. In this last month, another public health study was released by San Diego State Public Health Department, and I was reacquainted with the term environmental justice, again underlining the fact that this crisis would not be occurring in La Jolla or LA or any other national coastline where economically advantaged people live. So, and then also on February 29th, the California State Assembly unanimously passed a resolution asking President Biden for the necessary additional funding. I was able to share that information with the many school boards I visited, but your proclamation, local and focused on our students, made many trustees perk up their ears and listen. There is something every person can do and every elected official can do. Ask for the funding and reiterate the hazards. I want to thank President Quinones. We spoke and texted after a California Coastal Commission presentation and meeting in October, and somewhere along the line, the idea to get a school board proclamation emerged. I also talked to Bethany Case, a volunteer with Surf Riders. I appreciate Trustee Quinones' supportive nudges and Bethany Case's suggestions. I've enjoyed visiting other board meetings. Perhaps I'm biased, but this space is friendly and welcoming. Your technology is superb. The screen is visible, the sound works. You schedule public comments at the beginning of the meeting, which is very inclusive for the community. Two boards do not do that, and in my past, I would have left early, frustrated and tired. But now I'm retired, and so I waited them out. There is room, parking, signage, and a welcome, accessible atmosphere. And the five of you stay on topic, follow Robert's rules in the Brown Act. And I just want you to know that that is very useful to this community. And I think, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but this is the best school board meeting that I attended over these last few weeks. So thank you very much for what you've done. You're a leader in this case. There's always work to do, and I appreciate everyone's help on this.
There are no more public comments.
Thank you so much. Now we're moving on to item 9, discussion and action items. General functions. A, the balloting for the California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly seats. I'd like to recognize Superintendent Jose Espinoza, who will introduce the item.
Thank you, Trustee Quinones. Each year, the California School Board Association conducts an election to fill open positions for the delegate assembly. Each board member may cast no more than one vote for any one candidate. Write-in candidates may also be listed on this ballot. It is respectfully requested that the board cast a ballot for no more than 9 candidates to fill the vacant Region 17 CSBA delegate assembly seats. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to move that we vote for the 9 candidates listed on the document to fill the vacant seats in Region 17 in the CSBA delegate assembly seats. May I have a motion? May I have a second?
I'll second that, and
Good.
I like the idea that there are 9.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second, and do we have discussion? Ms. Trustee Ellsworth, discussion? Nope. Any further discussion? We're moving on 9. Hearing none, call for the vote.
Ellsworth,
Yes.
Liker,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent.
We're moving on to 9B, governance document. Again, we recognize our superintendent, Jose Espinoza, who will introduce the item.
Thank you. To align practice with bylaws of the South County SELPA, Community Advisory Committee, and other South County school districts, we have revised BP 0430, Comprehensive Local Plan for Special Education. It is respectfully requested that the board approve this governance document for first and final reading. And I would just remind the board that we had a speaker, or we had a couple of speakers that came to us maybe a couple of meetings ago and talked about parent and teacher representation on the committee, the Community Advisory Council for the SELPA, the CAC, otherwise known as the CAC. And so this document would align with what the speakers were asking for.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. With that, I move that we approve the board policy 0430 as presented, comprehensive local plan for special education for the first and final reading. I've moved that item forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Medina. Any discussion?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. I'm wondering who, down at the bottom, it says upon receipt of the completed application, the review committee will confirm. I was just wondering, do we confirm it here at South Bay or SELPA?
The board confirms it.
Yeah, because it said the board. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We'll call for the vote.
Ellsworth,
Yes.
Liker,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you. We're moving on to educational leadership. Item C, the 2021-2024 LCAP update. I'd like to recognize Assistant Superintendent Pamela Riker Montiel, who will give us an update on the LCAP input process and draft goals. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. Good evening, President Quinones, Superintendent Espinosa, trustees, executive team, and community members. Tonight's update will include some information on our LCAP input process, specifically our in-person protocol and our district-wide survey that recently went out. I will share some current educational partner input thus far. Again, it's not complete, but to this point, a draft of some possible goals based on the input and an opportunity for the board to provide input into this process and what I share this evening. This is a reminder of the educational partners input process. These are the same 3 areas that we've looked at a couple of times together, but tonight what I've added is in parentheses in red font, a date that it has been completed. I did that because I want to assure you that we do this. It's not just said that we do it, but we actually do it. And so you can see when we had our staff input session on February 21st through the district leadership team, the instructional leadership team, LCAP, DLAC, and so forth. We have completed our California Healthy Kids survey, and then an additional survey went out to all staff and parents on February 27th. We did that because although staff had the opportunity for the most part in the staff meetings, we do have classified staff as well, and additional sessions should be done for classified staff, but we know that there are cases where staff are not present when meetings take place. It could be for a variety of reasons, but we wanted to make sure that we did a survey as well. And then we will have, we added to our website written feedback. So we have a written feedback form on our website that is ongoing. And then of course we will have the public hearing and our ongoing opportunities in these meetings. So just to share with you what the input process was, the purpose is to engage all of our educational partners. The input is absolutely necessary and valued. It is an essential component of the development of the LCAP. These are our goals, and you've seen our goals many times in my presentation. So these are our current goals. These are not the new goals or the new action steps. These are our current. For the LCAP process, we reviewed the mission, vision, and values that the board adopted in December, and we reviewed the current 3 goals that were just shared. We looked through the lens of what resonates and providing input on those current goals and action steps. There were 5 questions, and then groups rotated through posters. In some cases, they used their laptops and the Google Doc that we provided, but they did a rotation so that they answered all 5 questions and then debriefed. We started with the district mission, vision, and values because, again, as we've said before, it is essential that we use the mission, vision, and values as the foundation of the new LCAP moving forward. And that was something that was definitely missing in our last LCAP. The questions were the following 5. So do our goals align or directly align with the newly adopted mission, vision, and values? We did ask in all of the questions that there was evidence provided. We also asked if our goals and actions reflect our hopes for all educational partners. So that's certificated, classified, parents, community, everybody, including our students. It should say our students as well. And then did we miss anyone? Are there goals that you would recommend be added, deleted, or changed? And then suggested wording. Are there any action steps that you would recommend be added, deleted, or changed? Again, with some suggested wording. And what do you believe our primary focus should be for the 24-25 school year? Yes, this is a 3-year LCAP, but it was important for us to also know going into the next school year what everybody would believe, or everybody believes they believe their opinion is on what our primary focus should be. So the reoccurring themes from the input process, and this is as of March 4th. So we continue to receive the input forms. We provided a Google Doc that once the posters are done in the rooms, someone's to go back and transcribe those onto the Google Doc so that we have them all electronically. This is in no particular order. And again, this is what we would consider fairly raw data. There isn't necessarily explanations in all of it. In some cases, there's a lot of narrative, and in other cases, it might be 1 or 2 words. So I'm not going to read the entire list to you, but you can see that we start at the top with intervention for students. We do have some current or reoccurring themes such as reducing class size. There's a lot of energy around combination classrooms, community schools, as well as our curriculum right now, currently, whether or not teachers feel that we have the curriculum necessary to meet the needs of our students, whether it's core curriculum or supplemental. There's equally energy around PLCs and planning time, and ending with the final bullet, reduction of positions at the top. I put that in quotations because that is what's usually referred to as administrative positions or positions at the education center. Some of the possible goals based on the preliminary input are included on this slide. Again, these are just things that were generated in the process. There were a lot of comments around people liking our current goals. So it's not even a matter of disliking the goals so much as how we might either focus the goals more or use the language that's better aligned to our vision, mission, and values. So here are just some samples: ensuring highly qualified and developed educational partners, specifically staff, parents, and community members. That really came from the idea of potentially having a goal that focuses on the needs of the adults who are supporting students within our system, as well as our parents and community. Ensuring academic excellence for multilingual learners, foster youth students, foster youth, it should have a comma, students with disabilities and students experiencing homelessness. Now, when you look at the multilingual learners, foster youth, and students, students with disabilities, these are some of the groups that you will see when we're looking at our dashboard data that potentially may be underperforming students, all students, or that general population. Welcoming and safe learning environments. Basic services that came up. Would it benefit us to have a goal that is basic services? So transportation, child nutrition, the one-to-one devices, rather than rolling that into the academic goal in some cases. All students will be reading at grade level by 3rd grade. So there were some very specific suggestions. Implementation of community schools as another example. There was a lot of energy around integrating equity into all goals versus a separate goal. And then actually there was quite good dialogue or discussion around, should it continue to be a separate goal, or should we integrate it, in the pros and cons of doing that? Because we do want to make sure that we stay focused on equity. The next slide was straight from the LCAP Advisory Committee. So as a reminder, we have our LCAP Advisory Committee, which is made up, the majority is made up of parents. That does not mean that all parents come to every meeting, but the majority of the actual official members are parents. And so when we did this process with the LCAP Advisory Committee, this is, they actually started just writing goals on the underneath the question that said, what are some possible goals, or add or delete? So they took the mission statement and made goals from the mission statement. So they felt we should have a goal around partnership with community, a goal around educating students. So academics was in the parentheses. And then I put an asterisk because they felt it went with academic growth, which was also mentioned in the mission statement. Safe environment, like the campus needs, social responsibility and well-being. They combine those as external. How do students treat others versus the well-being, the internal? How do I take care of myself and my mental well-being and physical well-being? And then equitable environments, basic student needs. So they saw that it could be a basic services, but that's how we create equitable environments. And then I mentioned 6 already, and number 7 was an additional adding beyond the mission, which was professional growth for all. So at this point in time, I would like to answer any questions or hear any comments, areas of agreement, additional requests, as this is the Board of Trustees input opportunity into the process thus far.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the trustees. We'll start with Trustee Liker.
Thank you so much. So when it comes to the cutting from the top suggestion there, I'm curious, like everything else that we have, like our classrooms and our psychologists to student ratio, like is there a number that we have that decides how many administrators we have? And is also the second part is, when we're audited as far as how our funds are spent, if we were not in compliance with those ratios and it was top heavy, is that something that would be information we would be given?
So I do not have a complete answer for you this evening. It is certainly something that we can look at as far as recommendations in education code. What I will also say is that different programs come with different requirements. I would use our school counselors for an example. When you add school counselors to every school, then it makes sense that there is someone, not makes sense, but it's required that someone is supervising. And as a matter of fact, when we have interns, it's a requirement that we have someone supervising and providing coaching and support. So usually staffing is directly related to the programs and the needs of the program. But we certainly can bring back some of that information for you.
Thank you so much.
And I'm taking notes. I know Amy is too, but I'm.
Okay, Vice President Medina.
I don't know if I should add this question right now at this moment, but as I've been asking in meetings behind, like how are we going to measure, or how often are we going to be measuring, like if it's working? I know it's a 3-year plan and we have to stick with it for 3 years, but how are we going to make sure it's it is successful.
Yes. So actually, I think when I shared a little bit about the change in the template, they have ramped up the accountability around the metrics tenfold. So for every goal, I will have to indicate why we selected the goal, the input that we received to determine the goal, how we are going to measure the goal, and then every action step under the goal, how we are going to measure it. So in the past, if there was not what I would consider, say, a standardized test score or a result that could be linked to an action step, we didn't necessarily have to put a metric with it. So we would have our metrics under the goal, and let's say it was our SBAC data, maybe it was our Fontes and Pinnell data, which is a local measurement, but we didn't necessarily have to go beyond that. Moving forward, we will have to indicate both quantitative data and qualitative data. So the things that you heard about this evening in our presentations, our school presentations, such as empathy interviews, that type of data will be required. We will do a mid-year report on all of the action steps, goals, action steps, and the metrics, and then we will have to be monitoring on an ongoing basis. The difference is when we end year one, we will have to justify if something and actually make a statement, it was effective or it was not effective in meeting the goal. And if it's not effective, we either have to change that action step, delete the action step, or modify the action step to actually be effective in the future. So they, in the revision of the template and the directions and what the requirements are, that is going to be a piece of it. Or all of the things I just mentioned. Yeah, the metrics is a huge part of the new process.
Okay. I understand this is my chance to give some suggestions.
Okay, I've got my pen ready.
And I love having this information beforehand. So thank you. Thank you for suggesting that, because my first one, of course, is student achievement. I'm thinking super umbrella. There are a gazillion action steps that can go under there. And I think that is a different discussion at this, down the road a smidge. So student achievement would include, in my mind, the materials, which was brought up here, the, effective teaching materials, diversity of teaching materials, whatever the kids need. Professional development should go under there, I think, because that's who's going to be delivering. And then staffing, taking a look at staffing. And to me, since that's not my job, I don't understand exactly all the subtleties that are involved in this, but I do know that each of these areas is important to the whole, to student achievement. Thank you. My second one is the diversification of programs, a choice, because I think that would address keeping kids here. It would be to, making kids ready for the future, putting interests in their hearts and minds, and make them want to come to school. Yeah, stay here. And then my third one is to look at, and I think you kind of touched on, like transportation and other areas. I was thinking of, because it's a long process, the consolidation, right sizing, refiguring, whatever it ends up being called, if it goes forward, if it's, we choose to have it go forward, that this might be something to consider, because there are moving parts to it. And it is a long process. It's years long. So those are my two censors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. I think we're answering the question here. Questions, comments, area of agreement. We haven't got there yet. Okay. So here we go. I really like the, so who was surveyed? How did you get your data?
The survey, so we do the California Healthy Kids Survey. The California Healthy Kids Survey has a parent survey component and a staff survey component. And then we created our own LCAP survey that went out to all staff as well as all parents. And we used our email system. Amy sent those out.
Well, thank you for mentioning the survey because what was it? What's the first one you just said?
California Healthy Kids.
Yes, because parents have been chatting about that particular survey and how that data would be used in developing our future LCAP. And so it's real important that I feel that parents understand that when we ask for information, that it's important to respond and that they are valued in their response. That's what I noticed the past couple of weeks. I'm really looking at this reoccurring themes from input process. You know, there's a lot of hopes and dreams here. We're actually doing a lot of it, and effective professional development has been a reoccurring theme for 7 years. So I'd hope that we really look at that area and draw down to specific instruction and how to implement curriculum aligned to student achievement. That again, define the plan for student achievements right there. So I really would like, you know, highlight on the LCAP to say something like that. Also, you know, again, it speaks about ensuring highly qualified and developed educational partners, and that means everyone. In my view, specifically staff, parents, and community members, we're doing that, but you know, we want it now. So I'm really looking forward to something in our LCAP that fosters that belief. Basic services to support students in academic excellence. I'm so pleased that you added our district mission, vision, and values paper. I'm putting it in my book. And so because the LCAP is driven by our mission, vision, and values, and I see that in your presentation tonight. So advancing inclusion and welcoming environments, we're doing that. We can do a better. Integrated equity into all of our goals versus separate goals. So, you know, equity to me is defined in several ways and for different ways for parents and students that come to our schools. So I would like to look at programming, and that is equitable to all students and have a chance to participate in programs around the district, as opposed to going to a specific school for a specific program. So I'm really targeting music and arts right now. So I would like a goal around that equity piece that allows students the opportunity to have instrumental music and art. Let's see. I'm really pushing here. Thank you for the goals from the LCAP Advisory Committee input. Those are very succinct and really follow our mission statement. So I really agree with the LCAP Advisory Committee input. And so based on that, everybody has given comments. I did my, comment. Now we need areas of agreement.
And yeah, those are just opportunities. You don't necessarily have to give me all four. I just want you to, but those were
just went like
just
this.
anything you want to say, questions, comments, if you have areas of agreement or additional requests. And then I did want to share with you that I have been attending the County Office of Education professional development around the writing of the new LCAP. And so I will next month come forward with more solidified draft goals. I will be following the CDE's recommended format for those goals. And I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before, I talked a little bit about how there's different types of goals this time around, specifically broad goals. I guess that's specifically broad goals, or focus goals. And so I will have to take all of this input and see how it fits into a broader goal, such as academic excellence versus a specific goal for a student group, for example, for multilingual learners. So when I come next month, I will share some of that information as well, because there are some technicalities around writing the goals.
Okay, Kelly?
How many goals are going to be recommended? Have you gotten a feel for
There
that?
are no number of recommended goals. Trust me, we just had the workshop a couple of days ago and everybody asked that.
Yeah.
Is there a required number? No.
No. but
There's
is
that, and there
a-
isn't I think it really comes down to whether they are broad or specific
Mhm.
and or focused, and then how many action steps you want under a goal, because you could have 3 goals with 20 action steps under each of them, or you could have 6 goals with 10 action steps under each of them. So the more goals, the more action steps, probably the longer the plan, the more accountability or the more to report out on. So we used to have 4, we now have 3, but I think when we started, we had 13 in South Bay. So we have had a variation. Mhm.
So that I'm going to interpret from that that I'm not going to interpret anything. What is your idea? Something short?
I'm thinking
Do you
4 to
feel-
6 goals.
There, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, more than what we have now.
I'm
Okay.
that's where it's leaning. I
Would-
think particularly with the basic services, because even if you take our 3 current goals,
Mhm.
how they're written, and add a basic services, you're at 4. If you take away equity and integrate equity instead of it being a standalone goal, then maybe we're back to 3. But I definitely think it's going to be in that 4 to 6 range.
Okay, long as it's doable and your hair doesn't fall out.
What hair?
You have a lot of work to do. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm up for. Well, this is really going to be South Bay's flagship going forward. I just see some good things coming up for our LCAP for the next 3 years. And in determining what goals that you actually draw up and how the low hanging fruit will play out. Of course, the board will reaffirm this yearly, and with the results and the matrix you're talking about, giving us the assessment data that this program is not, or this program is, or we can do better here. And so when you're bringing the new LCAP to us, one of the areas I think that I read is that you're going to have to identify what programs are not working, or what programs are successful, and so will you just take those off the new LCAP without telling us, or how's that work?
So when I write the 3-year LCAP, then we will monitor based on the new LCAP. And so it would be at the end of the year. So the end of the year, I would come forward. I would do a mid-year report anyway, because that's going to be a requirement moving forward, as a mid-year report every year. It's been a little sporadic in these past few years. Some years, yes, some years, no. So there'll be a mid-year report, and the mid-year report is the opportunity for us to check in and say, okay, what might we be able to change now before we get to the end of the year? But it also gives us a little preview of what we might be changing. Then as I write the year 2 LCAP, it's still based on year 1, but that's where you would make the changes. That's where you would delete action steps and modify the language accordingly. And you write it into the narrative and state why you are doing so. And it would be based on metrics.
Well, thank you. And Assistant Superintendent Laura, we have enough money for all this? You make it happen. Thank you so much tonight for
make
your
it happen.
presentation. Thank you. With that, we're closed. Good. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to business services. Item D, second interim financial report 2023-2024. I'd like to recognize Assistant Superintendent Rico Lara, who will introduce the item. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Good evening, President Quinones, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Espinosa, exec team, and educational partners and community. I have here with me Interim Fiscal Director Michael Taylor, who will also be part of this presentation tonight. Tonight, we are providing an update to the 23-24 adopted district budget. The second interim reflects actual expenditures through January 31st, 2024. So as you know, we are updating the budget throughout the fiscal year. We are meeting the March 15th deadline to submit the report to the County Office of Education. It's always good to know of the process and that we're meeting those deadlines. And a little bit about that process. Soon after January 31st, we begin to develop the report. As we work throughout, as we complete the report, it is then posted and shared 6 days prior to the meeting, which is tonight. That's for the public to see and also for the board to see the information prior to tonight's meeting. Step 3 is tonight. We will be asking you to approve the submittal of the report to the county office. And after that, then the board president will sign the report and then we will submit it to the county office. Again, just a reminder of the process that starts soon after the January 31st for the first interim and ensuring that we are meeting the deadline and turning it into the county. Again, the slide that we show of the budget cycle, and here knowing that we are constantly updating the budget because we receive new information, things change. So we are constantly updating the budget throughout the year with new information. We are approaching the end of the current budget cycle. And as you remember, when we last met during the board study session, in January, the governor presented his proposal for the upcoming budget. We are at that time beginning to work on that budget. So there are two budgets concurrent that are concurrent. The current fiscal year's budget, which is 23-24, and then soon after that proposal, we begin working on next year's budget. So again, the annual budget cycle, there are always certain periods of time when we are updating the budget based off new information. And we are happy to report that we are recommending a positive certification, which means that the district can meet its financial obligations, not only for the current year, but the next 2 fiscal years. Remember, we are always working with a multi-year projection, an NYP. We're always looking to make sure we're fiscally solvent over a 3-year period. And we'll ask interim fiscal director Taylor to come up.
Thank you, Mr. Lara. Good evening, President Quinones, fellow trustees, Superintendent Espinoza. And thank you for the opportunity to help the district or the assisted district in this period of transition in the fiscal department. Let me preface my comments that if you are susceptible to math anxiety, you might experience it in the next few minutes. I promise I will go slow and I will try to explain as slowly as possible some of the concepts associated with our second interim budget. As Mr. Lara mentioned, this is to a certain extent a good news story in that we have a positive certification, but we do have some concerns and we'll outline those for you in the next few minutes. So the first slide is essentially our revenues. The district's revenues are broken up into 2 categories, restricted and unrestricted. And just as a refresher, restricted funding is funding that has to be used for a specific purpose. For example, disadvantaged kids, specific training. That is funding that essentially is fenced and has to be used for a specific purpose. Unrestricted funding allows the district to use funding for any educational purpose that it deems necessary. So I just wanted to make that distinction as you look at this slide and the revenues. And essentially what you have here, a majority of the district's funding, revenue funding, comes from kids. Kids being enrolled, and also kids who are enrolled coming to school. So I want to make that point. As you can see from the chart, a majority of the district's funding is coming from kids coming to school. The flip side of this equation is expenditures. And so school districts by nature are a very people-centric organization. And as you can see, a majority of the district's expenditures go towards salaries and benefits. And I'm sure this is not news to you, But again, just wanted to reiterate that as we move forward and get into some more details relative to the second interim budget. So also, as we've talked about revenue and also expenditures, the district, and in fact, all districts in California have received what's called pandemic funding, COVID funding. And as you can see on this slide, the district has received a number of what's called ESSER funding, and the district has essentially spent all of that funding. But at the very bottom, you have another line of funding, arts, music, and instructional materials discretionary block grant, which the district has received $2.4 million for that specific purpose. And then also learning recovery emergency block grant, again, dollars received by the district for that specific purpose. And again, we do have some time to spend that money. And the first, for the arts music block grant, we have until June of 26 to spend that funding. And also for the learning recovery, June of 2028. So all told, essentially all of the ESSER, the COVID dollars have been spent. And a lot of districts are having that same experience because the last item or the last ESSER funding, ESSER 3, expires in September of this year. And so if you have not spent that funding, you essentially have to give it back. So that's the one-time funding. And again, this is restricted funding. And a lot of districts have used during the pandemic, they were using unrestricted expenditures and moving them to that one-time funding. And the challenge with that, especially if you have ongoing expenditures, if you tie it to one-time funding and the funding runs out, you could have a bit of a challenge. So let's just talk a little bit about the difference between the first interim, which was presented to you in December, and the second interim. And what you have here is essentially showing the difference between those two budget iterations. If I could direct your attention to the very left, the beginning balance. And then we have the revenues, expenditures, and then contributions. Let me just say a few words about contributions. What are contributions and what's the difference between revenue and expenditures? So contributions are essentially tied to two main programs in school districts. One is special education, and the other is routine restricted maintenance. And essentially, the story there is never enough funding that districts receive to educate their special needs kids. They never receive enough funding, either from the state or from the federal government, to educate their special needs kids. The other area is routine restricted maintenance. Districts receive no funding for that. So that means that we have to take revenue out of the unrestricted column and contribute to these restricted programs, specifically special education and also routine restricted maintenance. So that's what that number is. And then at the very bottom, you have the ending balance. And so directing your attention over to the far right, the differences between each of those line items, you come to the ending balance, and the ending balance goes up roughly about 84,000. So not much of a change. Not much of a change. I think it's worth noting that negative 100,000 at the very beginning, the beginning balance, is a result of an audit adjustment. And you all essentially, from what I understand, approved the audit report at the last board meeting, which included this audit adjustment. Now, the audit did not have any findings, but it did have this audit adjustment that now reveals itself at second interim. So I don't want to get into the complexity associated with the audit adjustment. Essentially, it's our cash holdings at the county office were adjusted. And then also we had some invoice postings that were essentially undone from last year and posted in the current year. So the net of that is a negative 100,000. And so as you can see, the ending balance actually goes up. Relatively speaking, 84,000 is a lot of money, but when you're talking about a $40 million ending balance, it's not a lot of money. So if I could just hit pause just for 1 second and just get you to focus on this ending balance, about $41 million, because we're going to come back to that. And it's going to loom pretty large, as Mr. Lara mentioned, that we need to have fiscal solvency, not in 1 year, not in 2 years, but 3 years. And that is a nice, I would say, a nice ending balance, a very robust ending balance that allows the district to maintain fiscal solvency in 3 years. So what I've just presented is a snapshot as to where the second interim is in the current year, and a comparison to what you approved in December, which was the first interim. Now let's look forward and dive into the multi-year projections. All budgets are based on assumptions. And as you all know, assumptions change. A budget can be exactly right on the day you approve it, and exactly wrong the following day. Why? Because assumptions change. And so I just wanted to kind of preface my comments associated with multi-year assumptions, looking at next year. The first line, the COLA, 0.76. That's an anemic COLA. And we'll show you a slide to show you the value of that 0.76 COLA. We do have declining enrollment. And it was, as was mentioned earlier, the district since 11-12 has lost about 46% of its students. And we're going to show you the impact, the financial impact of losing students. PERS and STIRS rates are high, and essentially this is the pension funds at the state level are not robust enough to maintain the payments to the beneficiary. So a lot of that burden is being pushed on to school districts and also local governmental agencies. Health and welfare contributions go up on an annual basis. And as I mentioned at the outset, special education, very expensive, and costs go up on an annual basis. And also, as I mentioned earlier, one-time funding is coming to an end. And then also, last but not least, staffing reductions. We do have some staffing reductions in this budget, but centered around not backfilling retiree positions, not backfilling vacant positions, and also not backfilling temporary contract positions. And moving over to fiscal year 25-26, the COLA improves 2.73, which is nice. However, as you will see, it's not going to help with the district's deficit spending. And I'll go into more detail about that in just a few minutes. And again, using a 3-year average, let me just explain that. Because we have declining enrollment, the district has the option to use last year's ADA or enrollment. Or it can use the average of the last 3 years, whichever is higher. And so the district is using the average of the last 3 years to determine what its ADA is, average daily attendance. And again, we're expecting a declining enrollment of 210 in 25-26, which means about $3.1 million less. STIRS and PERS rates are still climbing. Health and welfare contributions go up, as well as special ed contributions. And again, we also have staffing reductions in that second out year. Again, tied to not backfilling retiree positions, vacant positions, and temporary contract positions. Enrollment. And I'm sure this is not news to you. This slide essentially goes back to 16-17, but as you can see, in the current year, we've seen a 32% reduction in the district's enrollment. For next year, at 36%. So we're keeping a watchful eye on this because, as I mentioned at the outset, districts receive their revenue from kids coming to school. There we go. So let's take a few minutes to talk about the COLA. The COLA for next year, 0.76. I'm not sure I've ever seen a smaller COLA. It's very small. So when you take that COLA, well, let me just talk about the first line. That's where we are today. And you just take the the LCF dollars per ADA, and our revenue is about $59.7 million. So moving forward into the next year, where we are experiencing a decline in enrollment of 210, and our ADA is going to be 2,700, multiplied times the dollar per ADA, our revenue for next year is projected to be 54 million. And the slide is pretty self-explanatory. You take the difference, the district is losing $5.6 million in ongoing revenue. Now, that's with the COLA. And again, the COLA is very small. And so if you turn that 5.6 million into a percentage, what you have is a decline actually of 9.4%. So we wanted to really make that distinction, and we'll bring this back to you, this concept of the value of the COLA. Even if the COLA were 8.22%, which it is this year, when you have declining enrollment, it erodes the value of that COLA. And so another eye chart, and again, I don't want to get into all of the numbers, and I would just direct your attention to the bottom line, getting back to that ending balance for this year, that $41 million. This is a robust ending balance. And it's allowing the district to remain fiscally solvent. So let's just go from 23-24 over to 24-25, and I'll show you what's happening here. Obviously, the first circle is the 41 million, which is the ending balance, projected ending balance for this year, which becomes the beginning balance for next year. You take your revenues and your expenditures, and what we have here is deficit spending to the tune of about $5.2 million, which is fine. If you have a robust ending balance, you can absorb that deficit. And again, deficit spending, you're spending more than you're bringing in. And as long as your ending balance is big enough, you can absorb that. So the difference is you have a new ending balance, a new projected ending balance for next year of about 36 million. Moving forward to the next year, 25-26, again, the ending balance of 35.8 becomes the beginning balance for 25-26. You do revenue and expenditure differences, and your deficit spending, again, but it's higher. It's 7.1 million. And again, the new ending balance, new ending projected balance is about 28.6 million. So as you can see, that ending balance gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's, and Mr. Lara will talk about some cautionary notes, and this is one of the items to be very cautious about. Again, that ending balance, we're required to set aside that 5% for economic uncertainty. And then we also set aside funding for contingencies, things that we don't know are going to happen, but we want to make sure we set funding aside so that we can take care of those situations. And we've got a laundry list, and this is all part of the second interim. And it's clearly identified in the state software. Security and safety, 6 million. Technology refresh, 2.5 million. Educational programs, 3.8. And those are, what you see in red is committed. When you approve the budget tonight, you're essentially committing a portion of that ending balance to these specific programs. And then at the very bottom in the green, you have an assignment for field trips and sixth grade camp. So essentially that is the end of my portion of the presentation, and I will turn over the microphone to Mr. Lara.
Some cautionary notes, and so the state 73 billion budget deficit, you're probably asking yourself, wait, what? 73? Last time we spoke, it was under $40 billion, and that was the governor's outlook. So it's changed. And let me clarify. This is the LAO's economic outlook. So it's a nonpartisan entity that also forecasts the future of the state economy. But what you can see is there's a challenge here with the state being in a budget deficit, whether it's 73 billion or 38 or 50, it's a large number. And for now, for now, we don't know what the impact is on education. With such a high number, there has to be some type of impact, and we'll learn more about that during the May revise. You saw the impact of declining enrollment. We speak on it each and every time that we meet, and the impact that it's having on our revenues and our facilities. Our ADA has still not reached the pre-pandemic levels of 94%, but it has been improving. So slowly, with the hard work from the different teams and the sites and staff, that is slowly increasing each and every year. Our deficit spending, spoke about that, the challenges. We are every moment that we can trying to identify the best way to manage that. There is a major challenge in that we are not able to reduce expenditures at the same rate that we are losing the revenue. So as we take steps to manage that, then it just gets more challenging each and every year when we continue to lose the revenue. And our one-time pandemic funding is expiring September of this year. So next steps, I mentioned the governor's May revise will provide an update to the January proposal. Again, we're not sure yet what the impact will be on education, but that update to the proposed budget will happen sometime around mid-May. Estimated actuals will be closing the books. We will, unspent dollars will be dropping to the bottom line, the general fund. And then in June, we'll be adopting, or the board will be asked to adopt the 24-25 budget and the LCAP together. That is the end. So before we ask for approval of the submission of the positive certification, are there any questions?
Well, we'll move to authorize the submission of the positive certification of the second interim financial report for the 2023-24 year. Let me move that forward. Do I have a second?
I was wondering when the
Do I have a
questions.
second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Melanie?
I seem to be going out of order here. I beg your pardon. I need some clarification here. I've heard it a million times probably. The COVID money is state or federal? Okay, good. Have that in the right place. And the,
Federal?
I'm sorry.
I
wanna-
didn't speak to the mic. Sorry. Go ahead.
And then I'm on page 9. So are all of these? No, they're not all federal, are they? The Prop 68 is state?
I'm sorry.
Is it 68, the arts position?
Are you looking at the restricted funding?
Correct.
Okay. Your question is of the arts, music, and instructional materials, whether
Is that
it's state.
or federal?
That I believe is a state. It is a state. That's state funding.
Okay, and then the
So-
learning recovery emergency.
As well.
Department is, okay. good.
Yes. And, as we're thinking about the impact on education, the budget shortfall,
Mhm.
it has been discussed, and sometimes we hear that those may be affected or reduced.
That's kind of what I'm getting
yeah.
after. Yeah.
For districts throughout the state.
And then are all federal funds that come to us, they're all restricted, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're just specific to programs that I am aware of.
Okay, just fully making sure. And then I had one last one that I asked last month about the incursion onto the general fund of the expenditure for special ed. I don't believe I got that number, that percentage.
We'll double check the Friday update, but I believe it was in there, but we'll double
Okay,
check. And if
I
we
would
didn't get that to
appreciate the
you, we'll
repeat,
get
yeah.
it to you. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
And
Any other questions or comments? No, hearing none. We'll call for the vote.
Ellsworth,
Approve.
Liker,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with one absent.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item E, Resolution 23-025. I'd like to recognize Assistant Superintendent Rico Laura, who will introduce the item. Thank you for your presentation again.
Good evening again, President Quinones, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Espinosa, exec team, staff, and educational partners. At this time, both Jake Thompson from Verkada and Bob Cook from Nick Partners will be joining me, and we'll also be sharing a little bit about themselves and who they work and their work. So South Bay has been engaged in a process to look at our current safety and security and learning environments and looking at ways to improve them. As you know, this has been a process that we started a couple of years ago. It started with, well, we've always been looking at these measures, but we really look at it now at a big district-wide level lens. And it started with the TBR Consulting in 22-23. They conducted an assessment at every single site and department. They spoke to staff and other educational partners. And with that, they provided an assessment. He came here, Glenn Arling did come here and present those recommendations to you. I'm bringing back a couple of those recommendations just as a refresher here. But some of the key recommendations were improved camera systems, also an improvement of access control, meaning not limiting the access to our school buildings to one area and ensuring that we know exactly who's coming in. Another recommendation were improved alarm systems at all of our sites. Again, those are just some of the recommendations that were provided in the report, but I'm sharing some of them connected to today's security system agreement. And in the next two slides, we're sharing a timeline. I won't mention every single point, but really the idea here is that this was a very detailed process that involved speaking to various educational partners. Again, sites, we walked sites, we identified and researched certain vendors, and we contacted them and discussed our needs and our requests. And with that, we began visiting all the sites with site principals and other staff members as well, who were sharing their challenges, their best hopes around safety and security. And again, now we're more in the current timeline here, and really here is identifying a vendor that we want to partner with, and then working with them and other staff to complete the board documents that are in front of you this evening. And we're here today seeking board approval. And before we get to that point, I do want to ask Jake Thompson from Verkada to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about themselves and what they do, and an opportunity for you to also ask any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Rigo. My name's Jake Thompson from Verkada. I cover San Diego K through 12 as well as municipalities. And with me from NIC Partners, I represent the manufacturer, and he is the integrator with NIC Partners.
Quick history about NIC Partners. Hi. Morning. Thank you for having us. We've been around for almost 30 years. 80% of our business is basic K-12. That's what we specialize in. We're also an integrator. We're also a contractor. So we do both things. So we do most of our work is in-house. A few things we do sub out, but mostly it's in-house. And one thing about our company is really nice. We're employee owned. So all of our employees take pride in the workmanship because they want to continue working and building our company where we are. So just a quick thing about us.
And taking it one step further on why so many schools in the state of California and nationwide have adapted Verkada, we wanted to create a modern security system to really take it to the next stage in terms of technology. And the unique thing about Verkada working with Rigo and the executive team is your guys' needs within the district through the consulting firm and working with the principals and your guys' staff is 6 of our product lines, everything falls under the single pane of glass software. So as you see here today, why schools choose Verkada, very easy to work with in terms of being able to find, save, and share footage from the camera system itself, as well as being able to work with local authorities, sharing floor plan maps in the event of emergency, access control, being able to lock down all doors, being able to have a single point of entry with our intercom system to be able to have that two-way communication before we let someone into a school at those ingress and egress points. So taking it a step further with our AI-powered analytics in terms of our tools, being able to create a person of interest alert. So if someone shouldn't be on property, that someone like a principal is being notified via SMS or email messages. So as well as stopping the vaping epidemic when kids are in the restrooms where you can't put cameras, right? Getting those alerts and taking that proactive step. So with Verkada, you get, we have a leading 10-year product warranty, unlimited users. You guys will be able to create multiple groups in terms of each school, user permissions at the director level, all the way down to the principals and what they're able to see on the system. Automatic firmware and software updates being cloud-based, so no on-prem servers, which was a huge thing in the consulting security assessment. 24/7 US-based technical support. So over the next 10 years, looking forward, you're getting truly an appreciated asset in terms of predictable renewal costs. So with that said, is there any questions? Thank you for your
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for coming. We'll open the floor to Trustee Ellsworth.
I've been out of order, so I waited this time.
We're on page 10 now.
Yeah, I got it. Oh, funny guys. I'm thinking of what was brought up earlier today. One school had a wing, at 10 o'clock at night, it had all the lights on and unlocked doors. How would this be handled? Who's looking at it to know how to address the issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with our access control system, you can create a schedule. So, hey, janitorial service should be gone at 8 p.m. at night. Doors are all locked at 8 p.m. at night, unless someone has a key card to have access to that after hours. So you can set door schedules and things of that nature.
Yeah, but what if? So is there somebody looking at the I don't know if it's feed or on the other end of it?
Yes. So in this proposal, we included our virtual guard alarm system. So not only are our cameras filming on property for crime, vandalism, things of that nature, we can set up proactive alerts. So, hey, no one should be on property from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. until staff's back on property. A real live Verkada monitoring agent will review that footage and based on the customization on each school and the needs, would dispatch local authorities and notify them if there was a threat to property in that event.
So is it timely, or is it when somebody looks at it when they come into work at 8?
It's
morning?
totally based on the schedules that we set, and every school
Okay.
is going to have a different
Okay.
unique thing, right?
Okay.
One school may have a cleaning crew until 11 o'clock, so it would look a little bit different based on each school site, and we will work with the exec team on a site-by-site basis.
Yeah, because I think some of the concerns have been what happens when nobody's there.
Correct.
And whether it be crime or whether it just be, slight negligence, got to lock the doors, that's all. I'm just kind of wondering who's looking at it in a really timely manner.
Yeah, And again, based on each school, it's going to be a different schedule and the needs are going to be a little bit different for each site.
Okay,
Right.
so we can set it up.
Yep, you
See
can
whatever-
customize it, change the schedules,
Yeah. Okay,
things of that
thank
nature.
you.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for coming this evening and presenting your product. I'm really impressed with the vaping thing because we do have seventh and eighth graders here. So, but if you're picking up vaping, do you also pick up smoke?
In regards to smoke, are you saying like the smoke from the vape or?
Somebody
like a-
throws something in the trash can and it goes on fire.
Yes, correct. So the chemicals it's not just a vape sensor. It can sense if there's motion, noise levels, as well as TVOC ratings. So with our vape index, chemicals that are in THC pens as well as vape pens, as that evaporates, you get alerted and we can set different thresholds for those things. So it's not just a vape sensor, it's an environmental sensor that's tracking air quality as well as CO2 ratings, which is very beneficial for certain areas of inside the restrooms.
Perfect, perfect. How about sewage smell? Does it pick up that?
It's in the works. I'll let my.
Okay. That's gonna cost us extra. So I'm really interested in how this is going to pan out. How long do you think, if approved, how long will it take to roll out?
So labor-wise, it's about a 6-month project. But as far as materials, once we order, we want to know, but we have people start working before the material comes. So it could be 6 months to a year, depending on when the material gets here. But it's getting better since the pandemic. So before I used to wait 3 months for stuff, but now it's getting a little better. So
How much disruption would it have when installing this equipment at a school site?
So we will work after hours. So there'll be no disruption. Then summertime, obviously, we can work in daytime.
Okay, that's good to hear because we also have intercessions, so you'll work around that too.
100% yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in this and I hope that that this is a product that serves our purpose. And but I didn't read here, or I hadn't heard about the ongoing cost for this. This is for the product.
Yeah, so what's in the proposal hand in hand with our 10-year hardware warranty and our 10-year licensing, the cost you see today is setting yourself up for the next 10 years. So it's a true cost of ownership, and the total predictable renewal cost only come as if we would to add in the future extra cameras, doors, things of that nature for a different project, more or less.
So is this warranty our lifetime or your lifetime?
It's a 10-year warranty on all of our products.
And if your company closes?
I can assure you our company won't close. With that said, though, with all of the products would be able to incorporate utilizing real-time streaming protocol with other software platforms.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you so much. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay.
President Quinones, and can
Yes.
I just add, no system is 100% proof, right? As the board knows, in our current situation, we've had several break-ins that we didn't know about. We had at our transportation office, we had somebody that stole fuel. We had somebody that drove on to the Emory, the warehouse area and stole pallets. So no system is perfect. What we're looking to do is really to improve the security in terms of our security audit. I just want to remind the board, I know Rigo pointed that out. We had a security audit early on that gave us some recommendations. This is our first phase in implementing some of those recommendations. Although nothing is perfect, we are hoping that we are mitigating some of the security risks that our school district, that we have identified or that our auditor had identified. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that reminder. At this time, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the resolution, adopt a resolution 23-025 and authorize the purchase and installation of a district-wide cloud-based security system. Do I have a motion?
So move.
We have a motion made by trustee Medina. Do we have a second? A second? Trustee Liker seconds. Okay, call for the
Ellsworth. Liker.
Yes.
Medina.
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with one absent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Next up, item F, 2024 bond measure. I again recognize Assistant Superintendent Rico Lara, who will introduce the item. Thank you.
Hello again. Good evening, President Quinones, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Espinosa, exec team, staff, educational partners who are here tonight. During the September board meeting last year, 2023, Mark Farrell was here sharing the results of two surveys, one being a community survey to identify interest in a potential bond in November. The other was a staff survey to assess the interest in workforce housing as well. At that time, the board directed us to continue to explore the potential of placing a bond measure on the November ballot. And we have done that, and now we are here, and Mark Farrell is here now to provide an update. I do want to front load you with the direction that we're going to ask at the end. So number one, do we place a bond measure on the November ballot? So if yes, the second question is, would you like us to include workforce housing on the project list? So, when we go for a bond, there's a long project list that states the projects that we'll be doing at all the sites. And the third question that we'll ask you for direction is, do we place one or two bond measures on the November ballot? And again, Mark will be talking a little bit more and providing you more information to help you make those decisions.
When you say one or two, would the same subjects, but separately? The
Separately,
workforce would be one and the other one like that?
he will explain that part.
But that's
Yeah.
what you mean.
Yep.
Good evening, President Quinones, trustees, Superintendent Espinosa. So we'll review a little bit of what we've talked about and answer some of the questions that have already come up and answer any additional questions the board has. Aiming at the screen too. Okay. So back in August, when we tested, we reached out to voters and asked about their opinions about the bond. Refresh your memory, we said the district is considering placing a bond on the ballot, and we read one of the two bond measures you see down at the bottom and asked, if the election was held today, how would you vote? We then asked them, well, the district is also considering placing a second bond measure on the ballot, and read them the other question and asked, if the election was held today, how would you vote? And when we do those surveys, we get that initial test, that initial response from the voter. That's on the left, the before information, and then on the right is after information. So this is after we talk about the various projects that may be funded with the bond, the tax rate and the cost associated with the bond. So here for the bond language kind of focused on safety and security, you can see initially 67% said they would vote yes, another 8% lean yes, and that support increased to 71% yes, 7% lean yes after getting that information. Their response was very similar when the bond language was more focused on repairing classrooms and school facilities. So 66% yes and lean yes initially, increasing to 72% yes and 6% lean yes after getting that information. So with those kind of survey results from the voters, oops, went too far. We believe placing two bond measures on the ballot would be viable for South Bay, given the response from voters and the projects, potential projects that you have that have been identified in the facility master plan, along with the potential for workforce housing. And we've kind of put together here what a potential kind of bond issuance schedule might look like, and what the total amount of bonds the district would be eligible to issue if you go with this two kind of bond measure strategy. So the thought on the table there on the right, initially, as you're starting to plan your projects, bringing on the architects, getting things designed, getting through the kind of state approval process, you may not need as much money. So, we're doing a smaller series of bonds, if you will, $12.4 million. Then as your construction starts to ramp up because you've gotten projects approved by DSA, then the dollar amounts increase, and we're issuing bonds every 2 years and kind of alternating them from bond measure 1 and bond measure 2. So over this 10-year period, these two bond measures would generate $125 million in funding for projects. Broken out $67 million for one bond measure, $58 million for the second. The reason these numbers are a little bit higher than what we surveyed, we have another year of assessed value information to kind of increase that dollar amount, that the growth in the district's assessed value, and also how we've broken out that election 1 into kind of the 3 series with the smaller series up front, kind of increases the dollar amounts that the district would be eligible to issue. In terms of projects and the project list, typically when we do this and for the types of projects that the district has, we really recommend the project list be pretty much the same between the two different bond measures to give the district the flexibility to fund basically the full set of projects you have. And then you can see we're kind of bouncing between the two different bond measures over this, roughly 10-year period. And again, these numbers are kind of the preliminary estimates, what we put together today. Ultimately, the timing of when bonds are issued, the dollar amount of every issue comes back to the board for approval at that time. And so we would adjust these dates, these dollar amounts based on the realities of your program, what projects you have, the cost of those projects, and kind of the timing of those projects. So, the bonds, as you know, are paid back by property taxes. All properties within the district are assessed. Had very strong assessed value growth. I mentioned last year, 6.5%. Partially why we were able to increase the bond amount numbers from the survey. And then kind of looked a little bit at, well, what does this mean for the average homeowner within the district? And so this is actually a listing of all of the single family homes in the district and kind of their assessed value kind of broken out in these $100,000 increments. So over half, more than half of the district's homes are still under $300,000 of assessed value, the average being $322,571, and these are 2023 figures. So if we look at then, okay, well, what does a new Prop 39 bond measure mean for the average homeowner? So with Prop 39, we have a $30 per $100,000 tax rate. That's the maximum we can ask for. So if we take that $30 divided by 100,000 and multiply that by the 322,000, you get $97 annually. So the actual cash impact to an average homeowner would be $97 for a single bond measure. If we do two bond measures, it would be $194. And we did talk about this back in September, and this is something really more down the road, but something I just want to make sure the board is aware of that could be coming as part of the bond program. So there's an education code statute that sets a limit on the amount of bonds a district can have outstanding. For a unified district, it's 2.5% of assessed value. For elementary, high school districts, it's 1.25% of assessed value. Okay. This is this limit doesn't, it doesn't limit how much you can put on the ballot. So you can ask for any dollar amount on the ballot. You don't need to look at this limit. We only look at this limit when it comes time to actually issue the bonds, to actually sell the bonds to do projects. And because this is in education code, there is a process to go to CDE to get a waiver from that provision. If you follow the process, CDE grants the waiver. I haven't seen in 20 years a district that has not been approved for the waiver. It does not waive the $30 Prop 39 limit. That is something constitutional. That is something that can't be exceeded by this waiver. So we are still constrained by that Prop 39 $30 per 100,000 tax rate limit. And so when we go through this process, it requires consulting with the district's bargaining units, the bond oversight committee. We have a public hearing. We go through these steps and ask the state to increase the debt limit. And so if we look at where we are today in 2023-24 with your $6.5 billion of assessed value, we have that 1.25% limit. That gives us $81.6 million kind of gross limit right now. You have $65.2 million of bonds outstanding. So as of today, you could issue $16.3 million of bonds. But every year, you pay off old bonds and assessed value grows, so that capacity increases. So by 2025, we'd expect $21 million in capacity. So if we're talking about issuing, the bonds pass and we're issuing in 2025, $12 million, we're not going to need to do anything. But maybe by the time we get to 2027 or 2029, we may need to be looking at doing a waiver. And, rough guesstimate at this point, just kind of looking at kind of assessed value growth projections and the pay down of the old bonds, maybe we'd need about another 0.5%. So we'd be looking at like a 1.75% request to CDE. That is the last slide. So happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Trustee Liker?
Talk about math anxiety. This is so okay. My mind is it's spinning a little bit with all these numbers, but so let's say that we have, okay, maybe many of our homes are assessed at 300,000 roughly, but we know that their value is greater than that. And as people pass on and property is passed on to their family or whatever, and then the value goes up, realistically, many of their homes are $1 million homes at this point. And so then, by my Google calculations here, roughly $250 a month increase would be that would be like a $3,000 annually increase if it was $1 million home.
For $1 million home, a $30 tax rate would be a $300 per year.
A $300
tax.
Nothing lady.
Yeah.
And then so is that something that in each 2 years it's gonna go up that much, or is it like every 2 years is there gonna be that kind of increase? Or
well, so the realities of Proposition 13, right? So if you're familiar with Proposition 13, passed in 70 something, I can't remember. Basically what that did is when we buy a home, the assessor sets the value of that home that day you buy the house, right? The assessor can only increase that value by 2% per year unless that you sell that property and then it gets reassessed back at kind of the current market rate, whatever you sell the house at.
Or if you
do major, if you do add-ons, major, increased square footage, those kinds of things. So for, those folks that have homes under $100,000, I'm guessing they bought those in 1970 or even 1960. They've never traded hands, and they could be right next door to somebody on the bottom of that that just bought their house last year for $1 million. And so, you know, two different property owners right next door to each other can be writing a very different property tax bill every year. And so that's kind of the reality of how, you know, how the property taxes work and how the bond taxes work. So we kind of look at it and say, okay, well, what's the average, right? You know, if the average is 322, at least we can say, here's what it means for the average homeowner, knowing that, you know, people are going to be below, above. And so people have to kind of look at what their actual, you know, assessed value is. And a lot of you know, people won't necessarily think, oh, wait, my assessed value is only $300,000 because, you know, they see the house next door to themselves for 600,000, 700,000, whatever it might be. So that sometimes gets in, you know, the average voter's head thinking, oh, wait, it's going to be 6 times 30, not the 3 times 30 because I've been in my home for 10 or 20 years.
So back to the question of, would this rate increase every 2 years when the new?
The tax rate would basically stay the same. So the goal, if so we're assuming that overall assessed value increases by 3.5% per year, which is conservative given what the growth has been historically here in the district. So it's kind of, you know, goes to, you know, the budget assumptions, right? If assessed value grows at exactly 3.5% every year for the next, you know, 30 years, then that tax rate would stay exactly at $30 per 100,000 for each of the, you know, for either one bond measure or you know, $60 for the two combined. So that the tax rate, when we sell the bonds, the bond payments are fixed. So the goal is to kind of set it so that it'll be below that $30, assuming this 3.5% growth. The reality is when assessed value is growing faster, we'll see that tax rate kind of decline a little bit every year. So it'll go from, you know, $30 to $29.50 and so on every year. That's typically what we see happen because we're trying to issue the payments, you know, at this lower growth rate than what's actually historically happened and what's likely to happen in the future. That answers the question. But basically the tax rates, the tax rate is where the goal is to keep.
Are payments going to stay the same? No, they're going to go up every 2 years as
your payment, as a property owner, your cash payment would go up by 2% per year. So it would start at $30 and at most it could go up 2% the second year. And I'm sorry, I can't do that math in my head.
Thank you.
I think it's at 60 cents or something like that.
If I can, I should have added this at the start and given the why behind this. Why are we doing this? Why are we asking to put a bond measure on the November ballot? Our sites average 60 years, or on average are about 60 years old. And we, like similar to special ed, we don't receive not even close to enough funding in other areas to be able to upgrade our facilities. So when we're thinking about the best learning environments for our kids, what we see in Eastlake, what we see in other areas around San Diego County, our kids deserve the same. And our staff deserves the same. And, you know, everybody, all of us deserve the same. Our families deserve that too. We may not ever get to the same exact place that other areas are at, but we definitely can continue our facilities the way they are. And we definitely don't have the money. So that's why we go out for bonds. And that's the why behind this. And again, when we're thinking about students and the future of our kids, they need the best learning environments possible. So again, this is why we're doing this and asking for that direction.
And I would just add to that. Thank you, Rigo. I think it's always important to share the why. And often when we discuss different issues with the board, you know, I always say everything is so interconnected. Everything is so complex. So to Rigo's point, our students deserve something that they're not receiving now. And if we cannot give them facilities that look like the facilities in East Chula Vista, when we look at our transfers, we lost quite a few students to Chula Vista. Right? So that's one of the things that as a board, we also have to consider. We can simply say, we're just not going to do anything about it. And then we have issues like the issues that we have at Central. I think Central was $47 million to upgrade right now. And so again, everything is interconnected. If we want to have facilities, the types of facilities that our students deserve, we can't hope that the state is all of a sudden going to find money to say, don't worry about it, guys, we got you. They're not going to say that. The state fully believes that maintaining schools is a community responsibility. And so I can tell you that across this state, the way that schools are updated, they're remodeled, they're rebuilt, is through community bond measures. This is the only way that that's going to happen. And so again, when we make a decision, we're not just making a decision around, you know, do we want to increase? Yes, it is a cost for our community. There's no other way to put that. But the cost, we know the cost for the community, right? That we just went over it. What we are not sure of and what we're not talking about is the cost of not going out for a bond. The cost of not going out for a bond is that our schools, our learning environments continue the way they are. And I know the board has visited all our schools. I want you to think about the learning environment at Emory compared to the learning environment at one of our other schools that has not been upgraded. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Trustee Ellsworth?
I have some questions about the 1 or 2 ballot kind of stuff. Okay. So I was looking at the questions that you gave us, we're referring to, the pie charts. And one is the voter attitudes towards safety and security ballot for a bond. Okay. And the other one was repairing classrooms. And then I heard a bond, like the second one, repairing classrooms was what you referred to. And then the workforce thing, and that's not in here exactly. So
it wouldn't necessarily need to be. And so with the bond, you have a 75-word ballot question. You have probably, about half of those are kind of almost taken away by some of the legalese that you have to have in there. So we've got maybe about 30 words to describe what project would be done in that 75 words. And so then you have a longer, in the resolution, you have what's called a project list. And that lists all of the potential projects that might be done at the various school sites. So likely housing would fall kind of in that full project list.
So what is the public going to be seeing in the brief wording that's on the ballot?
I mean, that still needs to be written. And so
yeah, what are we really
it would be
after?
summarizing, it would basically be summarizing really kind of what the major, where the majority of the funding is going to be spent.
Okay.
So a lot of it would be based on more things like modernization and
yeah, I
renovation of school
understand.
facilities.
If you do separate ones, you can kind of mesh them
Right.
in the wording. But I want it to be, I would like it to be clear to the public, if we were to have 2 of them or even 1, what exactly to expect. Because they may support one thing, they may not support it, whatever.
And typically what we've seen where multiple bonds are placed on the ballot, either both pass or they both fail. Voters don't kind of pick and choose between, well, I like this one, don't like that one. And so typically it's all yes or all no.
Okay. What impact, if at all, if the state puts on the facility prop or measure? 24.
Well, other than the year that the state school bond was Prop 13, it has not had a negative impact on the passage rate of local school bond measures. The benefit to South Bay is I think it is very likely that the state will put a school bond measure on the ballot. If that passes, how the state funds facilities is, as Superintendent Espinosa said, the state doesn't just give free money to fund school construction or renovation. They require a local match. And so that local match really for school districts has to come from passing a local bond measure. Because you've seen your budget presentation, there's not just money that you're given every year that you can say, oh, well, we'll use this to fund a $10 million school renovation or $47 million school renovation. So it's a little bit of maybe the carrot that the state provides, and that if it's you pass a local bond, you may be eligible for some amount of matching funds from the state.
So if you could tell us the difference between a parcel assessment as opposed to selling a home for $1 million. When your home is assessed for a certain value, it's the dirt.
Like a parcel tax.
Yeah.
So a parcel tax is a flat tax per parcel. So it's a set dollar amount, $50, $100, X flat amount per parcel, regardless of the value of the parcel, whether it's a $100,000 home, $1 million home, or a $10 million office building. They would pay $100. Typically, parcel taxes require 2/3 voter approval, and parcel taxes can be used for salaries, so for teacher salaries. So typically, if a school district places a parcel tax on a ballot, it's to fund general fund, basically, expenses to fund teachers.
So if my home is assessed at 167,000, but my home is worth $1 million, I'm going to look at this bond measure here at the assessed property assessment.
Yep. So it would be, yes, let's say I'll do easier math at $150,000. That's, basically going to be a $15 tax versus a $30 tax if you were, $45 tax, excuse me, 150,000 times 30 divided by 100,000. Sorry, $45 tax per year.
Just one question before we go off to the question here. When we write the language, whether it be for one or two, when we write the language, will we put an end date?
There is not an end date. There's not, we will disclose in the tax rate statement what we're projecting the final year to be of the taxes, but there's no sunset provisions with school bonds and the tax rate with school bond, because you may, if let's say things are delayed, if it's taking longer to do projects and you don't issue the bonds as quickly as we've shown on this list, that end date may get pushed out.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Mark, and just to clarify, the end dates, those are usually for parcel tax.
Yes,
right?
parcel taxes typically have a set end date. So for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, et cetera.
Well, I was concerned about what I heard last night about any measures, bond measures, or any tax measures that were recently voted in, that if this new law, I don't forget what the number is, but big corporations want it, that if we don't put an end date, that we'd have to come back to the voter and have that reevaluated by the voter and put an end date if it's a measure. Am I wrong about that?
I've heard something about that. I do not believe it affects voter approved general obligation bonds.
So what you're saying is that we wouldn't have to come back to the voter?
No.
that law passed?
I don't believe so, no.
I'm gonna write this down, okay? Because we know it costs a lot of money to place it on the ballot.
Yeah, I believe what that measure is targeting, is, the parcel taxes that can be citizen initiated parcel taxes that are 50% approval. I believe that's the target of that measure.
Okay, that's what I would be concerned about. So the question here, trustees, is, do we place a bond on the ballot for 2024? Yes or no?
Well, I see the wording as a ballot, and one of the options was to separate the two. One for facilities and one for building a workforce housing.
This is not the language right now.
No, so,
I know, that's
so,
why I want some clarification.
Yeah, it's
sure.
not the
So, I mean, I guess what we would do
Yeah.
if the board would like to kind of continue moving forward with placing a bond on the ballot, what we would do if you said, you know, let's say, for example, you say we'd like to consider placing 2 bond measures on the ballot. We would have bond council actually draft those resolutions. We'd have preliminary language to share with the board. So both bond measures, the language for both bond measures, as well as the project list. So we would work with staff on developing that language to then bring to the board for you to take a look at.
Right,
and
so
then
what
consider
we're,
passing
what
those
we're
resolutions.
determining now is, do we want to place a bond on the 2024 ballot? A bond,
And I think what my question is what's going to be in that bond. Yeah.
which he's shared with
Right.
you
they're
that's
both
coming back.
things, And I'm not.
He's gonna come back. So we have to do the parameters
I know
first.
it's going to come back. I'm just wondering at this point, it'll come back as one thing if we vote tonight.
Well, first we have to
say.
decide, do we want to do it? Do we
I-
want to do it?
Oh, so
We
I
got one up here. We got one. Who else wants to do a bond? Sure. 2. Okay, we got 4. Okay, the second question, because the language is not there. It's just a survey thing. So, next question is, do we do a, one or, no, we're gonna do 1. So the next question is, do we want 2 on the ballot for 2024?
Okay, thank you.
1 yes?
I would
1,
like
2,
to see
second.
it separated, yeah.
Okay, so that's a 4. Okay, the next question was, do we want something written around workforce housing? So, whether it be bond number 1 or bond number 2, we know we need the facilities, modernization of facilities and all that encompasses. But the question here is, do we want language in it, one of the bonds to include workforce housing?
I'm sorry, I'm confused here on procedure. We just voted to have a bond measure. And now something that's not on the agenda, do we need to have it agendized to change it, or can we do that?
Now, that's the question on the
Yeah.
floor right now. Do we
Yeah,
want workforce housing to be part of a bond on the ballot for 2024?
So right now it's just the direction
Right.
on what to bring back for formal
Okay.
vote on board approval, adoption of a resolution.
Right.
So what we need is the direction for us to draft the language,
Mhm.
for us to show you if it's the 2 bond measures. And also for you to see the project lists in detail of exactly what the voters would be voting on. And this final question is workforce housing one of those items in the the large list, which is the project list around the things that we will be able to do when we're asking for additional public funds.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent, for that explanation. Melanie, do you have any further questions? Thank you. So, do we have a yes there? Yes, yes. Right, we got 4. Okay, we've answered your 3 questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And next steps will be, as Mark stated, coming back next month for adoption of the resolution. But of course, we will be providing those materials in specific languages to you ahead of time.
Perfect. I thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to Human Resources. Item G, Appointment of Director of Fiscal Services. I'd recognize Executive Director Melissa Griffin, who will introduce our appointed director.
Thank you. Good evening, President Quinones, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Espinoza. I'm here tonight to explain our process and also ask for a recommendation for our Director of Fiscal Services. Following the resignation of Joel Ryan, we began recruitment for the new Director of Fiscal Services. We held panel interviews on January 28th. The final candidates were then brought forward to interview with the executive team on January 29th. And tonight I am here asking for your recommendation. I'm making the recommendation for the approval for our Director of Fiscal Services. Once you place your vote and we move forward, I will invite him up depending on where we land. So a motion to approve.
This is where we get a little wonky because we don't know.
Can I make a motion? Motion to approve the appointment of the Director of Fiscal Services, who we will perhaps
We will.
be
He is
introduced
in the
to.
audience tonight with his family, so.
Okay. I move to approve.
Second.
Thank you very much. We'll call for the vote.
Ellsworth,
Please, yes.
Riker,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with one absent.
I would like to invite Jonathan up to join me at the podium so he can introduce himself and also talk about our next steps with his new appointment. Thank you, Jonathan.
Welcome and congratulations.
Good evening. Thank you for that. First of all, I'd like to thank the board president and trustees and Superintendent Espinosa and the executive team. But a little bit about myself. I know that the board represents the citizens of the South Bay community, and through you guys and through the team, the students, and that's how we affect change. I have 14 years in education, the first 8 as a truck driver for local districts, the last 6 as in the business services. I've touched purchasing, payroll, many different departments, but the last 2 has been with the San Diego County Office of Education with the Student Wellness and School Culture program in programming, and particularly the finances for the COPES grant, which is creating opportunities to prevent and eliminate suicide in school-age kids. So I've touched the finances, but I also feel the touch directly with the students. And I plan to collaborate and lead my team with an empathy and care that directly impacts our students. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. You guys will get 110 commitment for myself. I feel like part of the community. I grew up in that community. My family, Rose, Cielo, and Jonathan are right there behind us. Cielo went to Mendoza and Central and VIP Head Start, right? So thank you guys for the opportunity to be here. And I can't wait to collaborate with the whole executive team and in particular with my boss, Mr. Rigo Lara. Thank you guys.
Thank you and congratulations.
Any questions?
Oh, we're opening the floor.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
I will not speak numbers tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you to your family for coming. All right, we're moving right along. We're going right into consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar will be enacted in one motion in the form listed below. Prior to the approval of the meeting agenda, there was an opportunity to request placing consent calendar items in the discussion action section of the board meeting. There will be no discussions on these items prior to the board vote. The superintendent and staff recommend approval, adoption, ratification, acceptance of all consent calendar items unless otherwise noted. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve all items in the consent calendar as listed, included the superintendent's recommendations for denial or approval or leave of absences.
Thank you. I have a second. We can't hear you.
Teacher voice I should have used. I will second that.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. We'll call for the vote.
Ellsworth,
Yes.
Riker,
Yes.
Medina,
Yes.
Quinones.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with one absent.
All right, we're moving right along. We're going on to future agenda items. At this time, each trustee may suggest one topic for a future board meeting. Are there any requests at this time for a future board meeting agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move right into future agenda items follow-up. And again, I'll recognize our superintendent, Jose Espinoza, who will provide direction and our next steps.
Thank you very much, President Quinones. The only item that we have is a breakdown of reclassification by grade and at the 4 schools where they increased. And I believe we sent that in the Friday update, and Trustee Medina and I are looking for some time to meet to review some of that data.
Yes, thank you for sharing it on the Friday. And yeah, we'll make some time.
Yes.
Okay, so we're okay. So what we're going to do is have a follow-up meeting with the superintendent and Trustee Medina in regards to the item that she requested. Will then you follow up in a future at a future time if you need that to be agendized. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So there we go. We're moving on to communications from the Board of Trustees. We have a 3-minute limit per trustee. Board clerk.
All right. Excuse me. So, thank you. I had the privilege of attending the CABE conference, the California Association for Bilingual Education. It was amazing. I admit I had some imposter syndrome being there because I myself am not bilingual. So I had to get over that and realize that as an advocate for bilingual education and seeing how it benefits our students and even the things that I learned during the sessions would benefit all of our students, whether they're in a bilingual program or not. It was interesting. I recommend it for all of us to go sometime or next year. That would be awesome. It gave me a better understanding of some of the things that are presented to us. It gave me a better understanding of legislation past, present, and possibly future that affects our students. One of also inspiration for the arts, which is coming up. We're going to have these funding for the arts and how that how we can use that for our students to just for them to express their talents, express their feelings, express themselves, and connect with each other and build a stronger community. And one of the things that I really took back from that conference was looking at our families and our students and our staff as assets, like not having this deficit thinking of what we are lacking, what our students' hardships are, but the beauty of the cultures and the experiences that our families have. So yes, I hope to I'm still trying to use that in my life, like look at what we have, not what we don't have, and how we can use those assets to continue to lift ourselves up. So CABE was awesome. That's all.
Great report. Trustee Ellsworth?
As you all may or may not know, it's been Dr. Seuss's birthday recently, and there's this program going around about reading.
right? And so all the schools have been embracing this, and I will have read at 7 after tomorrow. I will have read at 7. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to go into classrooms and rile up the kids and involve them in the reading, and it's just, I've had a great fun time, and I really appreciate that all the schools are embracing this to the hilt. They've had events, everything for weeks, parent events at night. They've had all sorts of stuff going on. So, yeah.
Thank you for that report, Vice President Medina.
First of all, I want to thank Central and Stanislaus for bringing Christopher Esparza and Maximiliano Trevino to lead our pledge tonight. And also want to thank you for your presentations. I've been in so many places lately. As it was mentioned, I was at the PTA. Today in the morning, I was at Nicola for the as a guest reader. I read to 2nd grade, and I gave them a choice because it's a bilingual class, but they wanted the book in English or Spanish, so they chose Spanish. It was great. They were so connected. They gave me a heart with their names and everything, so I felt really welcome. I want to thank Vanessa for the invite, and I enjoyed it. Thank you, everyone, for being tonight here.
Great report. Yes, thank you to Central and Sunny Slope who presented tonight and with their students. It's always nice when students come to our meetings, and even if it's just a Pledge of Allegiance, it's wonderful to see our students participate in our work. It's been a lengthy meeting. I will be short with my comments here. I did want to share that legislative day with California School Boards Association kicks off on Tuesday, runs through Thursday, which I'll be a participant in. And the key push here is that Prop 98 funds and how that's going to be realized with the state of the budget, state of California. I want to thank Trustee Mary Doyle for her efforts behind the sewage smell and disaster, and how she has lifted up South Bay Union School District in a light that no other school board has even touched yet. So we are the front runners, and I appreciate the board in recognizing that proclamation. In closing, I want to thank HR for the Employees of the Year event. It was quite nice, and the people that donated the contributed to the event. We sent thank you cards to those people and thank them for that. Also, the onboarding of all these new employees. This is a lot of work. So I just want to highlight the work of the HR department and thank everyone there for their work. And with that, I'll close the meeting. It is, what is it? 7:45. Okay, thank you.